making sure that I was capturing every question that you may have about ADHD. So how we're going to start this off is the first portion of this video, which we're going to go through right now, is some quick background information on ADHD and ADD. After that, part two, we're going to go into a simulation, which is a whole lot of fun, just to even have that information of how you can do that at home as a parent to get a taste for maybe what your child is going through on a daily basis when it comes to schoolwork or being in school. And then I'm going to finish off the video quickly with some IEP/504 specific recommendations that I think could happen in the school system to better support a child with ADHD or ADD. Thanks again, as always, for watching. Remember, this is a two-part video. This is part one. So after you get done subscribing and you finish watching this one, make sure that you click the link in the comment section of this video to access part two, which starts off with that simulation. So the goals for this presentation are to provide a basic understanding of what ADHD is and what it is not. In that same token, I'm going to attempt to answer any questions and dispel some of the common myths. I'm going to introduce some guiding principles for dealing with the ADHD symptoms or behaviors. Keep in mind, this is part one of a two-part video series. Since ADHD and ADD, I think, are such a big topic, it served the purpose to do two videos to make sure that I was getting you all the information you needed. So be sure after you get finished watching this video, which gives a little bit of background information on ADHD, that you're clicking the link that is in the comment section of this video to take you right to part two. It is a simulation-based activity, which I'll give you the information on how to do that yourself as a parent and go through that. And how I'm going to do that is have you watch me go through the actual simulation and how frustrating it can be. So something to look forward to. This reminds me, this is a good time. Please subscribe to my channel. Keep up to date, or catch up on some special education questions or what's new. This channel is free for parents to empower parents with knowledge, and it's also driven by parents because I make sure that I tailor my video to the comments that parents are leaving in any area that they need more information on in regards to special education. Please subscribe. ADHD exposed. So ADHD is identifiable via behavioral, not physical characteristics, making it more likely to be misunderstood. So a lot of the characteristics of ADHD have to do with behaviors, whereas characteristics of health impairment or something like that can be seen. So some misinterpretations of ADHD. Behaviors that directly result from ADHD are not primarily attributable to poor parenting, lack of discipline, low motivation, or intentional troublemaking. Believe me, it's not. There's no such thing as a bad kid either. Not everything that fidgets and or behaves defiantly is ADHD. So what is ADHD? It's a neurobehavioral disorder marked by inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. Be aware, though, that the mere presence of any of these behaviors does not automatically mean that the child has ADHD. And even if the child has ADHD, we still need to keep in mind that is that ADHD interfering with him or her to access the curriculum, because that's when a 504 and an IEP come into place, which I will talk about later on. So here are some indicators of ADHD. It's seen in early child development. Behaviors clearly distinguish child from a non-ADHD children. And this is why it's a developmental disorder. It occurs across several situations. It doesn't have to be all, but several situations. It's persistent over time. child's not able to perform at age-appropriate levels, so their reading or their math might be hindered due to their ADHD not allowing them to access that curriculum. It's not accounted for by environment of social causes. It's related to brain function. It's associated with other biological factors that can affect the brain. For example, head injury and genetics. Things we can see, or these are some of the common complaints: difficulties sustaining attention, daydreaming. Child doesn't listen, always losing things, forgetful, easily distracted, needs constant supervision. Child doesn't finish anything he or she starts. There's problems with impulse control, impatient, difficulties waiting for things or their turn, always interrupting others, blurting out answers, doesn't take turns, tries to take shortcuts on many tasks, including chores and homework, etc. Hyperactivity, always on the go. They're squirmy, they can't sit still. They talk too much, frequently hums or makes odd noises, unable to, quote, put the brakes on, end quote. Motor activity, child has two speeds. They're either dead asleep or they're going 110 miles per hour awake. Problem isn't, or what do these behaviors have in common? First of all, I want you to keep in mind, or just keep in the back of your head and be processing, are these behaviors controllable or are they not controllable? So what do these behaviors have in common? The problem isn't as much sustaining attention as it is sustaining inhibition. This is the hallmark of ADHD. Let me read that again. The problem isn't as much as sustaining attention as it is sustaining inhibition. Inhibition is a mental process that restrains an action or behavior or emotion. Problems of inhibition are not a matter of choice, but are instead a result of what is or is not going on in that child's brain. ADHD and the human brain, real quick. So portions of the brain's frontal lobe are responsible for executive functions, which are organization is an easy word for executive functioning or executive functions. But executive functions are consolidating information from other areas of the brain, considers potential consequences and implications of behaviors. Research suggests that in children with ADHD, these executive areas of the brain are underactive. Increasing the activity level in these areas of the ADHD brain have been shown to decrease behavioral symptoms. This is obviously the logic behind doctors using the stimulant medications as the first line for treatment. Some common stimulants that doctors use, especially in children, I see a lot more Ritalin, but obviously Ritalin and Adderall, I think, are the two biggest ones, at least that I've seen, and I'm not a doctor. This is one, probably the first part, but one line of defense. The other things that I think are very important are counseling that's paired with that medication to learn coping strategies, and a good plan in the educational setting to make sure that we are adapting, and I say we as a teacher, but that we're adapting or setting that student up for success. So what are some things that look like ADHD? Depression, anxiety, hearing problems, visual problems, seizure disorder, oppositional defiant disorder. Seizure disorder kind of surprised me at first, but I think they're referring to more like petit mal seizures, because you kind of, when going through a petit mal seizure, it's not the shaking like a grand mal seizure. It's just kind of blanking out for a little bit. So it could look like inattention to a teacher. Oppositional defiant disorder, autism, learning disabilities, parenting problems, substance use, medication side effects, lead poisoning. So what are there's 10 guiding principles for raising an education for educating a child with ADHD. I apologize to Barkley 1995, who actually, this is his information, but 10 guiding principles for raising and educating a child with ADHD. Give your child more immediate, let's address that impulsivity in that child, so immediate feedback and consequences. Keep in mind, consequences is now used as, this can be positive behavioral reinforcement. A consequence could be that they earn extra time on the iPad or the computer, something like that. Don't think consequences all negative by any means. Give more frequent feedback. Use larger and more powerful consequences. Hey, if you do good 4 out of the 5 days here at school, on a more targeted goal, then you get to have lunch with me. And I'm talking again like a teacher. But that's a powerful consequence or a powerful motivator. Use incentives before punishment. Obviously, that's what I'm talking about with the positive behavior intervention. Strive for consistency. That's a huge one. Act, don't yak. Don't get in a verbal altercation with them. It needs to be done. It needs to be kept black and white and very literal. Number 7, plan ahead for problem situations. 8, keep a disability perspective. I was unsure. I'm taking these from the gentleman on the last slide, and I didn't really like how that was worded, but it is good to keep in mind that this child is struggling with a developmental disorder all the time on a consistent basis for the most part. Keep that in mind. Don't personalize your child's problems or the disorder, and practice forgiveness. In using these principles, it is important that the parent and educators pause before reacting to the child. Give yourself time to process what the child is doing and going through those 10 guiding principles. Choose a response that is consistent with the principles and make sure everybody's doing that. That's why the use of plans, whether that be behavior plans, a 504, and IEP, are very good for the staff as well, because it provides that consistency with interventions that are being successful with that specific child. Additional tips: pay positive attention to your child. Catch them being good. Catch them in the act. That's application with the higher level thinking. Give effective commands. Those are short, sweet, and straightforward, very to the point. There's no room for misinterpretation. Limit the number of tasks to 1 or 2 per command. Don't give them a list. It's much better off to break it down, into more manageable tasks. And 1 or 2 may be low, depending on the age of the child. But I know in middle school, when I taught middle school, they would, if there was a 4-page test, that would overwhelm my students. So simply by providing them 1 page of the first page, letting them know when they finish that to turn it back into me, and then I would give them the second page, reduce their anxiety visually. I mean, you could see it on their face. So just keep that in mind. Maintain clear and consistent expectations and communicate. Manage a child's environment. So limit the distracting influences. Maintain a regular and predictable daily schedule. Black and white once again. When eliciting child's input, limit the number of choices available to 2 or 3 options. A child can sometimes with ADHD, can sometimes get very overwhelmed, even by choices for something that they want. It's hard for them to come to a final decision. Be patient, be persistent, be understanding. Most importantly, remember to differentiate the behaviors from your child. Bad behaviors are not synonymous with a bad child. And to even change that a little bit more, I don't believe in a bad child.